How we go about choosing reps, sets, and then the frequency of how often we do them, it depends on different things. And it depends on two things essentially. It depends on the individual and it depends on the goal, if you will. So there's like an internal part to it, which is the individual, and then there's an external part, which is the goal. So we're going to choose a few different, let's just say goals. We're going to keep them as general as we can. So we're going to start with strength training. Then we're going to look at endurance training. Then we'll talk about sort of stability training, which will sort of include rehabilitation. So these aren't definite goals. They are still quite general, but hopefully you should be able to gain an idea about which ones are most suitable. Because again, I'm working with people every day, choosing reps, sets, and trying to understand how many times they should be doing them. So there's a little bit more that goes into it than I'm going to explain here. But the goal for this episode is to give you a general direction and the types of things you need to think about with regards to why you're choosing certain reps and sets. So as I mentioned, we'll start with strength training. Well, first of all, we have to understand what strength training is. If we look at it or understand it in its purest sense, it's lifting heavy weights, let's just say 1 to 6 times. That would be described as strength training. So with regards to repetitions and strength training, as a general rule, you would only really go as high as 6. And how those reps should feel would be, you could perform 6 with the proper technique of the exercise and possibly a 7th. So you end that 6th rep and then you probably think to yourself, yeah, I could probably do one more. It would be very difficult, but I could probably do it. That's when you then know you're in the right sort of arena of the weight you need to be choosing for those 6 reps. So if the goal is to build strength, then we aim at 6 reps. Now, you can go as low, if you're doing sort of 1 rep max, or if you're in a competition, it's 1 rep. As a general rule, you don't normally train at 1 rep. You may go down as far as 3 or 4, but as a general rule, it will be from, let's just say, 3 to 6. Now, sets are kind of like the inverse of the reps. So if we take 6 reps, you might do 3 or 4 sets with that. Obviously, you would have long rest breaks in between, or longer rest breaks in between, of say, 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. And then you would perform the next set. So with 6 reps, it would be, say, 3 or 4 sets. If you come down to 5 reps, so there's a style of training called 5x5. So that is 5 reps for 5 sets. So that is another possibility. Then if you go down to 4, you could do 4 sets, 5 sets, 6 sets. So again, you can sort of see the pattern that's going on here. And again, as the reps come down, as a general rule, the weight would go up. It wouldn't go up by much depending on the body part. If it was upper body, each increment that you would go up for the upper body would be smaller than for the lower body. So if you're going to put an increase, if we used it using a barbell, generally the smallest weight is 1.25, and you would put that on either side. So it's a 2.5 kilo increase on as a total. So for the upper body, you would aim at 1.25 as an increase. For the lower body, you might go 2.5 as an example. So you can again start to see, with regards to if the goal is strength training, you would be, say, 3 to 6, 4 to 6 reps. And again, you can go anywhere from 3 to 6 sets. But if you're doing 6 reps, you generally choose 3 or 4 sets. If you're doing, say, 3 to 4 reps, you might do 5 to 6 sets. So you can sort of see that crossover. And obviously you've got then 5x5, which sort of sits in the middle. So that's strength training with regards to the goal. Now, the individual may be different because the individual may not be, maybe a beginner. So they may start somewhere else. So they may have to do, because they don't have the conditioning to be able to lift such heavy weights for half an hour, for an hour session, they may have to start with lighter weights, higher reps to build that condition and then build into strength training. So with regards to the individual, there isn't a lot of the individual that comes into it. When it's strength training, but you need to be ready for it. So that's the individual part. It's not necessarily there's individual parts that are determining the strength training. It's more the individual needs to be ready for it. So you need to build through other reps and sets through it. You obviously need ranges of movement as well to be able to get into the positions you need to get into. There's no point in doing heavy deadlifts, so strength training style deadlifts. If you haven't got the range of movement at the hips and the back's all bent out of shape, the muscles aren't working properly in the hips, because then you're going to cause yourself problems. So if it's strength training, to summarize, up to 6 reps, as many as 3 to 4 sets, but that works on the inverse. If you go down to 3 to 4 reps, you may do 5 to 6 sets. And then in the middle, you kind of got 5x5 training, which you can look up. And then with the individual, it's very much, you need to be ready for that type of training. So yes, that's strength training. Oh, and with regards to how often you would perform that, again, it depends on your capacity to be able to do it. As a sort of a beginner, and for most people, you can probably get away with it for 30 minutes, 2 times a week. That will give you benefit. Obviously, the more conditioned you become, you may add another session in, you may split the body up to be able to perform more sessions, so on and so forth. So again, there's sort of nuances in how you go about determining that. But if you're a beginner, 2 times a week, few days in between, allow the body to recover. But if you are, and by beginner I mean you've gone through your endurance type of training, you've built into strength training, you may just do 2 times a week. Again, if you've got loftier goals of just sort of general health and fitness, then you may push that up even more. But even pro athletes, their cycling training, it ebbs and flows through the week and through the months and through the year. So again, you've kind of got to go down that road to be able to understand how all that works. So yes, with regards to strength training, that's kind of how you need to think about it. And with training in general, that's how you need to think about it. The ebbs and flows, again, you wouldn't do strength training 12 months of the year. You'd cycle into it and then you'd cycle back out of it with the other types that we're going to talk about next.